I had just finished working under the hood, my hands stained with oil and grease, the smell of gasoline lingering in the air like a familiar, comforting scent. There it was, sitting in the garage, gleaming under the harsh light, the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. My pride and joy. A piece of history. A legacy. My grandfather, William Maxwell, a former mechanic and race car enthusiast, had started restoring this beauty years ago. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could finish the project, leaving me with this half-completed masterpiece. But for me, it wasn't just about the engine or the shiny chrome. It was about honoring the man who had taught me everything I knew about cars, about life. Every time I turned the wrench, I felt like he was there beside me, guiding my hands. I clicked the garage door opener, and it slowly began to rise. The sunlight beamed through, catching the gloss of the pearl white paint, highlighting every curve of the car. It was almost perfect. My grandfather would have been proud, but just as I was about to step back and admire my work, I heard it. A shrill scream cut through the silence of the neighborhood. "You thief! You stole my car! Call 911!" shouted Gloria Sutton, my neighbor and the HOA president. I froze. Keys still in hand, I stood there, dumbfounded. Was she really yelling? At me? She came charging across the lawn, phone pressed to her ear, her face twisted in fury. Behind her, I could already hear the sound of sirens growing closer. I was still standing on my own driveway, the keys to my Mustang dangling from my fingers, and Gloria, this woman who ran the HOA in Springbrook Estates, was accusing me of stealing my own car. I couldn't believe it. Not even a week ago, she'd sent me an official notice about some minor HOA violations. A patch of grass was too tall. A fence needed a coat of paint. But this was something else entirely. You see, Gloria Sutton wasn't just the president of the HOA. At 45, with perfectly styled blonde hair, she lived to enforce the HOA's iron-fisted rules, and her favorite pastime seemed to be inspecting people's properties, always armed with a clipboard and a superiority complex. I'd tried to keep my head down, but now it was clear. Gloria had found a new target. If you've ever had a neighbor who thinks they can control everything in your life, or an HOA that's gotten too powerful, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss the rest of this story. And share it with others, because the truth is coming, and it's a wild ride. I'm Ryan Maxwell, 32 years old, and I'm not the type to back down easily. But this was a whole new level of absurd. I turned to the police officer who had just stepped out of his cruiser, the confusion on his face evident. "Sir, can you please explain why Ms. Sutton is accusing you of stealing a car that's clearly in your possession?" I felt the anger boil inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "That car is mine. I've been restoring it for 2 years now. It's my grandfather's legacy." The officer, Bennett, seemed more annoyed by the situation than anything else. He looked at Gloria, who was waving some kind of paperwork in his face. "This man is a thief," she shrieked. "That car should be mine." I could feel my stomach turn as Gloria pointed at the Mustang, as if it were a piece of property she could simply claim. But what shocked me even more was how much she knew about the car, about the engine, the modifications, the history. I'd barely told anyone about the details of this restoration. Yet, there she was, rattling off technical specifications with the precision of someone who had studied this car for months. Officer Bennett turned to me. "Sir, do you mind showing me your registration for the car?" he asked. I nodded, pulling out the papers from the glove box and handing them over. They clearly showed my name, Ryan Maxwell, and my address. But Gloria wasn't done yet. She slapped a bill of sale into Officer Bennett's hand, claiming that Victor Palmer, some rich buyer from out of state, had purchased the car from her last week. She pointed to the sales document, demanding the officer arrest me immediately. "Mr. Maxwell," Officer Bennett said, looking between the two sets of documents, clearly confused. "This seems odd. You have ownership papers, but she's got a bill of sale for the same car. How do you explain that?" I felt a grin tug at my lips. Gloria wanted a fight, so I was going to give her one. I stepped forward, looking at the officer. You know, if you pop the hood, you'll find something interesting. I walked toward the Mustang, the officer following. Gloria's eyes narrowed, but she stayed silent. With a quick motion, I lifted the hood. The engine gleamed under the garage lights, and there, etched into the block, were the numbers I had been expecting. W. Maxwell, 1996, in my grandfather's careful handwriting and our old address. Gloria's face turned pale. Wait there. Must be some mistake, she stammered, her confidence slipping. Officer Bennett stared at the markings on the engine, then at Gloria. Ma'am, it seems this car may actually belong to Mr. Maxwell. Gloria was now visibly shaken, her voice faltering. There's been some kind of misunderstanding, she muttered. But her words had no weight now. She was exposed. Still, something felt off. There had to be more going on than just Gloria's personal vendetta. The whole situation was too orchestrated. As I glanced behind me, I noticed a small drone hovering. At the edge of my property, its camera trained on the scene. It wasn't a neighbor's hobby drone. It was too professional, too deliberate. I turned back to Gloria, watching her shift nervously. You've been spying on me, I said, my voice calm but sharp. She shot me a quick glance, but quickly looked away, avoiding eye contact. Something wasn't right. The officers left with Gloria promising to resolve the issue, though I didn't trust her for a second. As I watched the patrol cars disappear, down the street, my mind raced. Why would Gloria go to such lengths to steal my car, and why had she been so informed about the specifics of my Mustang? That night, as I sat in the silence of my garage, my eyes kept returning to the drone that had been hovering just out of sight. Who else was involved in this? Was it just Gloria? Or was there a larger conspiracy at play? Something that reached far beyond a neighborhood HOA? I had to find out. The following days felt like a whirlwind of pressure, confusion, and mounting anger. After the police had left my driveway that evening, I thought the nightmare with Gloria Sutton, the HOA president, would be over. But it wasn't. It was only just beginning. Gloria didn't give up easily. Over the next week, the harassment escalated. The HOA sent me multiple violation notices, all related to my restoration of the Mustang. They claimed I was running an illegal business from my home, even though I had made it clear time and time again that I was working on my own personal project. Gloria's power over the HOA seemed boundless. She was relentless, using every resource at her disposal to force me to comply with her demands. It was as if she had decided that this car, this project that had been my grandfather's and was now mine, was something that she could take from me. It wasn't just the HOA fines that were the problem. Gloria began showing up at odd hours, clipboard in hand, ready to inspect my property. She would stand at the end of my driveway, measuring the height of the grass, even scrutinizing the paint on my fence, claiming that it wasn't up to HOA standards. I was becoming a prisoner in my own home. I couldn't leave without feeling like I was being watched. I couldn't take a breath without thinking that someone, Gloria or worse, one of her spies, was lurking around the corner ready to pounce on the next violation they could find. The tension started to affect everything. I lost sleep, and my business was suffering because I couldn't focus on anything but Gloria and the HOA's growing pressure. I reached out to a lawyer, hoping for a quick resolution, but it quickly became clear that this wasn't going to be a simple fix. Gloria had deep ties in the local community, especially with some of the more influential figures who backed her agenda. The HOA had a legal team that seemed to be working overtime to find ways to make my life difficult. My lawyer was frustrated, telling me that I had a strong case, but it was going to cost me a lot. Each step I took felt like I was playing a losing game, one that was designed to wear me down. But the real turning point came when I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Late one night, While looking through old paperwork, I stumbled across a series of property transactions that linked Gloria to a nearby luxury car dealership. At first, it didn't make sense. What could a car dealership possibly have to do with Gloria's relentless campaign against me? But as I dug deeper, the truth began to unfold. The dealership wasn't just any ordinary car dealership. It was involved in buying up properties around Springbrook Estates, including a handful of homes owned by elderly residents, many of whom had been receiving frequent HOA violations. The HOA, under Gloria's rule, was using its power to pressure people into selling their homes at rock-bottom prices. Gloria had manipulated the system, targeting those who were struggling to maintain their properties. The dealership would buy up these homes for a fraction of their worth, all the while claiming they were just following standard procedures. But the truth was far more sinister. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized that my home, my father's home, the one where I had spent my childhood, was likely next on the chopping block. Gloria wasn't just after my car, she was after my property. She was trying to break me down so she could take it from me. I needed answers. I needed to know just how deep this conspiracy went. But before I could act on my findings, I was hit with a shocking twist. One evening, as I was working late on the Mustang in my garage, I noticed a black SUV slowly driving past my house. I thought nothing of it at first, but then a few moments later, I saw it again, this time parked down the street. I watched through the small window in my garage door, trying to see who was inside, but the windows were tinted too dark to make anything out. It wasn't long before I saw the SUV pull away, and I immediately had a bad feeling. I couldn't shake the thought that someone was watching me, keeping tabs on my every move. I couldn't help but wonder if the HOA had hired someone to keep an eye on me, or worse, if Gloria had some sort of private investigator on the payroll. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing strange noises outside my house, and when I checked the security cameras, I saw nothing. But the unease gnawed at me. The next day, I decided to take a more proactive approach. I started gathering more evidence on Gloria and her dealings with the car dealership. It wasn't just about protecting my car anymore. This had become a fight to save my home, and I wasn't about to let Gloria Sutton win without a fight. I made some calls, reaching out to neighbors who had experienced similar issues with the HOA. I was shocked by what I learned. Gloria's tactics weren't new. There were other families in Springbrook Estates who had been targeted by her, bullied into selling their homes for less than they were worth, all in the name of HOA compliance. She had been manipulating the system for years, and now I knew I was just another pawn in her game. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized how high the stakes were. Gloria wasn't working alone. There was a larger, far-reaching network behind her, pulling the strings and using the HOA as a cover to hide their shady dealings. The car dealership was just one piece of the puzzle, but I was starting to believe that there was much more to this than just property and car sales. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, I received a mysterious package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a set of photographs showing me working on the Mustang in my garage, taken from an angle that could only have been from someone's hidden camera. But that wasn't the worst part. At the bottom of the stack, there was a note that simply read, "You're in deeper than you think." I stared at the note, my blood running cold. This wasn't just about a car anymore. I had uncovered something far more dangerous. Someone, or some group, was pulling strings behind the scenes, and I had just become their target. Who was behind all of this? And more importantly, what were they willing to do to keep their secret safe? The days that followed the mysterious package felt like a countdown. Every moment was filled with anticipation, every sound seemed louder, and every glance over my shoulder felt more like a warning. The game had changed, and I was no longer just fighting for my Mustang. Now I was in the middle of a battle for my home and my life. The photos, taken from an impossible angle, had shaken me to my core. Someone had been watching me, tracking my every move. The hidden camera, the note, all pointed to one undeniable truth. Gloria Sutton was not acting alone, and whatever network was backing her was far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Had to act fast. I couldn't just sit around waiting for the next move. I had spent years rebuilding the Mustang, but this was no longer about just restoring a car. It was about restoring my peace, my future, and the legacy my grandfather had left behind. I had already reached out to a few of my neighbors who had suffered under Gloria's rule, and together we started to build a plan. If Gloria and her network thought they could intimidate me into submission, they were sorely mistaken. I wasn't going down without a fight. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon an unexpected ally, Marcus Hughes, a retired private investigator who had lived in Springbrook Estates for years but had kept mostly to himself. I had always known Marcus as the quiet neighbor, the one who kept his distance and minded his own business. But when I mentioned the surveillance and the mounting pressure from the HOA, his eyes hardened, and he offered to help. "Listen, Ryan," Marcus said one evening over a cup of coffee at my kitchen table. "I've seen this kind of thing before. This is more than just a few HOA violations. You're up against something far bigger. I'm willing to help, but you need to be prepared. They're going to fight back, and they won't hesitate to use dirty tactics to get what they want." His words stuck with me. The more I thought about Gloria's behavior, her relentless pursuit of my property, the more it became clear. She wasn't just the president of the HOA. She was part of something much larger, something organized and systematic. She had been using the HOA's power to pressure homeowners into selling their properties. It was a plan that went beyond simple fines or warnings. Gloria was the face of a bigger operation, one that was working to manipulate the neighborhood for financial gain. With Marcus's help, I started to gather more evidence, focusing on Gloria's ties to the luxury car dealership and the suspicious real estate deals happening around Springbrook Estates. What I found shocked me. The dealership was more than just a business. It was a front for a much larger operation. The deals they were making were part of a systematic campaign to acquire valuable properties in the area at bargain prices. Gloria was their enforcer, using her position as HOA president to pressure homeowners into selling their homes, often below market value. But it wasn't just about the properties. The dealership had connections to several influential figures in the community, and they were all part of the same network. Gloria was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. This was a well-oiled machine, and it was clear that they had been operating in the shadows for years, quietly gathering power and wealth while the rest of the neighborhood remained oblivious. With this new information in hand, I knew it was time to confront Gloria. I had spent too long playing defense, waiting for her to make the next move. Now, it was my turn to take action. One evening, after weeks of gathering evidence, I called a meeting at my house. Marcus, a few of the neighbors who had agreed to help, and even Emily, my younger sister who had recently passed the bar exam, were all gathered around my kitchen table. The tension in the room was palpable. Emily looked at me, her face filled with concern. "Ryan, are you sure about this? We have the evidence, but confronting her could backfire. You've seen how far she's willing to go." I nodded, my mind made up. "I'm not backing down anymore. Gloria thinks she can push me around, but she's about to find out that I'm not someone she can intimidate." The plan was simple, but dangerous. We would confront Gloria with the evidence we had gathered and demand she step down as HOA president. We would expose her ties to the dealership and the shady real estate deals she had been orchestrating. If we played our cards right, we could force her out of the HOA and dismantle the operation that had been ruining people's lives for years. But as I stood in my garage, staring at the Mustang, my grandfather's car, the symbol of everything I had fought for, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Gloria was ruthless. If she had the power to manipulate the HOA, what else was she capable of? The next morning, I made the call. Gloria was scheduled to come over that afternoon to inspect my property once again. But this time, it wasn't just going to be a routine checkup. I had everything ready: documents, photographs, and testimonies from my neighbors. Gloria was about to face the consequences of her actions. When Gloria arrived, she was as composed as ever, clipboard in hand, a smug smile on her face as she walked up my driveway. But the moment she saw Marcus standing beside me, her demeanor shifted. She knew something was different. "I don't have time for games, Ryan," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I've already told you that the car restoration in your garage violates HOA rules. I suggest you remove it." I stood tall, staring her down. "This isn't about a car, Gloria. This is about you using your position to manipulate the HOA and take people's homes for a profit. We know about your ties to the dealership, the real estate deals, and the people you've been working with behind the scenes." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw something flicker: fear. But it was quickly replaced with rage. "You don't know what you're messing with," she spat, taking a step forward. "You think you can just expose me? I have connections, Ryan. People. In power. You'll regret this." I felt my heart race as I stepped closer. "No, Gloria. You're the one who's going to regret it. The truth is coming out, and you can't stop it." Before she could respond, Marcus handed her a folder, filled with the evidence we had gathered. Gloria's face drained of color as she flipped through the pages, each document a nail in her coffin. But just as I thought victory was within reach, Gloria's phone rang. Her face twisted into a look of disbelief as she listened to the caller. On the other end, she hung up, her eyes flicking nervously toward the road. "I've made a call," she said, a sneer creeping onto her face. "You think this is over? Think again." The moment Gloria left, I felt a surge of adrenaline. We had won, at least for now. But as I watched her retreating figure, something gnawed at me. Was this really over? Or had Gloria just unleashed something even more dangerous? She wasn't acting like someone who had been caught. It was as if she was preparing for something bigger. The phone call, her reaction. There was more to this than I had realized. What was she planning next? And how far was she willing to go to protect her empire? The days after our confrontation with Gloria Sutton felt strangely quiet, almost like the calm before a storm. I had hoped that the evidence we'd gathered would be enough to force her hand, to expose her once and for all. But as I sat in my living room, the weight of the silence pressed in on me. Gloria's phone call, her cryptic words before she stormed off, haunted me. She wasn't just backing down. I could feel it. Something was coming, and I wasn't sure if we were ready for it. A week passed with no word from Gloria. It felt like she was laying low, maybe regrouping, but I wasn't fooled. I knew Gloria wasn't one to sit quietly when her empire was threatened. I had expected a legal response, some kind of retaliation, but nothing came. That is, until the evening I found a manila envelope on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single page of paper with a short, simple message. "This isn't over. You're not the only one with secrets." I felt the blood drain from my face. Secrets. Gloria wasn't just trying to save her position as HOA president. She had something much darker hidden in her past. Whatever it was, it had the power to destroy everything I had worked for. I wasn't the only one at risk. I needed to act fast. My next move was critical. Gloria had already tried to intimidate me once, and it was clear she wasn't afraid to go further. But now I was more determined than ever to expose the full extent of her corruption. I turned to Marcus Hughes. I trusted him more than anyone else in the neighborhood. His expertise, his years of experience in surveillance and investigation were invaluable. We had to dig deeper, beyond the documents, beyond the obvious connections. There had to be more to Gloria's operations, something hidden beneath the surface that no one had discovered yet. One afternoon, we met at my house to go over what we knew. Marcus spread out a collection of photos, property deeds, and transaction records. We focused on the Springbrook Estates area, the homes Gloria had recently targeted, the ones where she had allegedly pushed for forced sales. This is where it gets interesting, Marcus said, pointing to a section of the deed for a property on the corner of Maple Avenue. Look here. This house was bought by an out-of-state investor just a few weeks ago. Notice the price? It's lower than market value, and it's the third property in a row Gloria has pressured people into selling for less than it's worth. Leaned in, my stomach tightening. So, she's been systematically undervaluing homes. And the buyers? They're connected to the dealership she's been working with. Marcus nodded, his face grim. Exactly. But there's more. These properties? They're all going to the same development group. Gloria's not just selling out the neighborhood. She's setting up an entire redevelopment scheme, and she's using the HOA to make sure nobody fights back. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Gloria wasn't just manipulating homeowners to get them to sell. She was orchestrating a plan to clear out Springbrook Estates and hand it over to powerful developers who were using the HOA as a cover. It wasn't about the car or the fines anymore. This was about land, power, and money, and Gloria was at the center of it all. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process everything. My whole life had been rooted in this neighborhood, in this house, and now it was clear. Gloria wanted to strip it all away. If I didn't act, if I didn't expose her now, I could lose everything. Cliffhanger to part 5 later that night. Just as I thought I had a handle on the situation, Gloria's name popped up on my phone. I stared at the screen, unsure of what to expect. Was this a threat? A warning? Or maybe, just maybe, she was finally ready to back down. With a deep breath, I answered. But the voice on the other end wasn't Gloria's. Ryan Maxwell, I suggest you listen carefully. Gloria is no longer the only person you need to worry about. The voice on the other end of the phone sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't Gloria. In fact, it didn't sound like anyone I knew. There was a coldness to the tone, as if the speaker had rehearsed their words carefully, with precise intention. Ryan. Maxwell, the voice said again, slower this time. I suggest you listen carefully. Gloria is no longer the only person you need to worry about. My mind raced as I tried to piece together who this could be. A part of me wanted to hang up, but I knew this could be my only chance to get answers. Answers that I needed badly if I was going to save my home. My family's legacy, and my entire neighborhood from Gloria's corrupt plan. Who is this? I demanded, my voice a little shakier than I intended. You don't need to know my name, the voice replied smoothly, almost as if they were enjoying the moment. But I will tell you this. Gloria Sutton is a small piece of a much larger operation. She's working for someone bigger, someone who has far more power than you could ever imagine. You can expose her, but it won't matter. The wheels are already in motion. My heart skipped a beat. Someone bigger? Was this about more than just Gloria's manipulations? Was she involved in something that reached far beyond the neighborhood, and even the dealership? I clenched my jaw, determination flooding me. What do you want from me? Nothing, really. But if you value your home and your life, you'll stay out of this. Take the settlement Gloria offered. Walk away. You won't win, Ryan. I didn't answer immediately. I wasn't about to let a faceless voice intimidate me into giving up. I could feel the weight of everything I had fought for. My grandfather's Mustang, my home, my future. All of it hanging in the balance. I'm not walking away, I said firmly, feeling the power of my own words. If this is bigger than Gloria, then I'm going after the whole thing. I will expose every last one of you. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the voice spoke again, its tone almost amused. We'll see, won't we? Before I could respond, the call disconnected. The next few days were a blur. My mind spun with the information that had just been dropped on me. It was clear now that Gloria wasn't just acting on her own. She was part of a much larger network, one that extended beyond the neighborhood, beyond the dealership. But who was at the center of it all? Who was pulling the strings? I wasn't about to let fear control me, though. I had already uncovered too much, and I knew I couldn't back down now. If anything, this was the moment where the tide turned. I had the evidence, I had the truth on my side, and I had the support of my neighbors, who had been just as manipulated and threatened as I had. With Marcus by my side, we went public. We didn't just expose Gloria. We exposed the entire network behind her, including the corrupt developers, the shady land deals, and the underhanded tactics they'd been using to pressure homeowners into selling. It wasn't just about one woman anymore. It was about a system of corruption that needed to be dismantled. We held a community meeting, bringing everyone together to speak out against the HOA's practices. It was standing room only in my garage, neighbors from all corners of Springbrook Estates sharing their stories, their frustrations, and their resolve to fight back. We made it clear, the HOA was no longer in control. The local media got involved, and soon the story was everywhere. People who had suffered under Gloria's reign started coming forward in droves, offering their own evidence, their own accounts of how the HOA had used manipulation, deceit, and threats to force them out of their homes. Gloria's empire was crumbling. The turning point came when Gloria was forced to resign from her position as HOA president. She tried to fight back, but the weight of the evidence against her was undeniable. The media didn't give her a platform anymore, and the community no longer feared her. But this wasn't just about winning. It was about what came next. With Gloria out of the picture, Springbrook Estates could finally breathe. The new neighborhood council, formed by residents who cared about the community's future, began the process of reform. We fought to ensure that no one would ever be manipulated or pressured the way we had been. As for me, I stood in my garage looking at the Mustang, now fully restored. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol of everything we had overcome. My grandfather's legacy was intact, not just because of the car, but because of the community we had built. We had fought together. It wasn't just about a Mustang. It was about standing up for what was right. If you've ever had your home or your neighborhood targeted by a corrupt HOA or any power-hungry individual, drop a comment and share your story. You're not alone in this fight. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated, because the fight for justice isn't over yet. Together we can make sure that corruption has no place in our communities.